Mustafar, the world that changed it all. It was up on that black sand beach surrounded by a mount of magma that Anakin Skywalker burned away his former self. He didn't just lose his body, his flesh. He lost all of his limbs and his own identity. He would burn in the volcanic world's rivers, causing him to be cut down from possibly godlike potential, and from that moment onward, he would have to rely on a suit of armor to essentially breathe for him, to care for his severely damaged body. But long before Lord Vader met his hideous physical transformation here, Mustafar was the site of a rich history between the Jedi and Sith, a history that has spanned thousands of years. Hello again, students of the Force, and welcome to the Archives. It has been a while, but we here are returning to our planetary history videos, continuing today with the infamous volcanic world of Mustafar. For today's holocron, we will be pulling exclusively from the expanded universe, so there won't be any talk of Lady or Lord Korvax or the Eon engine. But if you would like a full canon breakdown on Mustafar, then be sure to leave a comment down below letting us know. Now, ensure that your envirosuit is operational against the unforgiving heat, because it's time to dive into the molten history of Mustafar. Mustafar is located in the outer rim world of the Enclave sector. It belonged to a system of the same name, but orbited another planet, the gas giant known as Jestafad. However, it didn't always orbit the planet, and it wasn't always a volcanic wasteland. Long ago, Mustafar was actually a lush and a bountiful terrain full of vegetation and greenery. It had once been a site so full of life that it was where the Jedi Enclave was stationed during the time of the Old Republic. The Enclave had been constructed in the year 5300 BBY, which was 300 years prior to the Great Hyperspace War, and of course, the return of the Sith. The master and the founder of the Jedi Enclave was Chugandar, a Jedi with legendary abilities in the Force. It was said that Master Chugan had a connection that ran so deep that he could alter the molecular structure of matter itself. How this was possible, we aren't really sure, as there are very few records of Chugandar besides the fact that he began the Enclave on Mustafar and that he crafted a powerful light side artifact. Jedi artifacts are actually of a very rare breed because it is only the Sith that typically craft talismans of objects of power. The Jedi often don't feel the need to create artificial ways to accomplish tasks through the Force or to boost their own abilities. In some cases, the Jedi believe the code outright forbids this, but whenever a Jedi artifact is crafted, it is usually extremely powerful and rare. And this was the case with Chugandar's cube, which had the ability to both channel and manipulate the Force to alter the physical properties of an item placed inside of it. It was a pinnacle of Master Chugan's accomplishments, and he would go down as one of the greatest Jedi craftsmen that has ever lived. After his death though, it was soon discovered the secret to the legendary power lay within a massive lava crystal found buried on the world of Mustafar. This mysterious mineral was found to greatly boost the power of a Jedi or those affiliated with the light side. The crystal became an extremely well-kept secret for the Jedi Order though, known only to a few of them who had lived on Mustafar before, those that loved their home and desired for it to remain untouched. Well over 1,000 years later though, that would all change. An Exar Kun Sith Brotherhood was now on the move. In the year 3996 BBY, Exar Kun Sith were striking key targets around the galaxy. Jedi targets, with many Jedi Padawans slaying their former masters, acknowledging their allegiance to the dark side and to Exar, and attacking individual smaller Jedi enclaves from across the stars. In the same fashion, the Sith assembled to make an attack on Mustafar to destroy the Jedi there. In a moment of desperation though, the group decided to defend their home, and to do so by harnessing the power of the legendary lava crystal. While the younger Jedi led the troops into battle, the old Jedi Masters all meditated around the crystal in order to channel its power. What resulted was a superpowered type of battle meditation, one that drastically increased the ability of all of the Jedi fighters. Not only was their connection to the light side extremely potent, but they found themselves able to access more powers than they ever thought possible. At the same moment, the Sith troopers found that, to their horror, that now they could only barely touch the Force. The battle, needless to say, was a slaughter, as the Jedi continuously repelled and overpowered the Sith forces. Unfortunately though, the Jedi had not previously tested the crystal's full capabilities, and weren't aware of the kind of power that they were accessing, the dangers of the powers that they were now openly wielding. As the battle raged on, the crystal suddenly began to crack and fracture. However, the Jedi Masters refused to stop channeling its power, not wanting to relinquish the battle to the Sith Armada. But this would end up costing them everything, and would alter Mustafar forever. The powerful crystal exploded, and the result was, needless to say, catastrophic. The raw might of the crystal's explosion sent the entire planet out of orbit. Mustafar went spinning out until it got caught in the middle of a gravitational conflict between two gas giants. Those giants were Lafrani and Jestafad. The gravitational tug-of-war caused immense tidal stresses to roil the planet's molten core, which in turn flooded the crust of the magma, decimating all surface life, including all Jedi and Sith on the planet. Only a single man survived the apocalypse of Mustafar, by the name of Master Erg Crow. The Jedi had managed to use the power of the crystal for himself, and had only shielded himself in the final moment. But even still, he was fatally wounded. Using the last of his power, he placed a shield over the crystal so that it would never be found again. Luckily, Mustafar would eventually regain a place in orbital rotation around a brand new sun and a brand new planet. But of course, it was never the same. The only inhabitants of the planet from that point forward would be the insectoid species known as the Mustafarians. The Mustafarians are very reclusive, and as a result, not a lot of information about their biology or their culture exists, but we do know that they are naturally resistant to heat, even to the point of shrugging off standard blaster fire when shot directly. Though they do not often wear protective armor since they work near lava so often, they tend to make a living off of mineral mining and selling, which is what attracted business to the world of Mustafar in the first place. An explorer of the native species by the name of Jessel Birkin would eventually discover a rich deposit of expensive minerals located in a dangerous area of the world. This would then establish the trade and mining of goods to Mustafar, and as a result, the region was renamed Birkin's Flow. The Mustafarians once populated most of the planet with their villages and their cities, but this would all change at some point in the time prior to the Clone Wars. Another apocalyptic eruption from one of the volcanoes wiped out nearly every city, except for one, the city known as Frali Deja, which would become the capital city of Mustafar from that point forward, for obvious reasons. For a brief period of time around the year 1000 BBY, Mustafar hosted an offshoot religion from the Sith Order, those calling themselves the Black Guard. The Black Guard had been started by a unique individual by the name of Volta Danat, who was once a part of Lord Khan's Brotherhood of Darkness, the version of the Sith where Darth Bane had stemmed. He was actually Lord Khan's apprentice for a time, until he began a philosophy of his own. While the Black Guard did not adhere to the Jedi way, he did propose the belief that the dark side could be used to understand the universe, and not just gain power for personal sake. Lord Khan disagreed, and the two ended up in a deadly lightsaber duel, one that nearly killed Danat. The Sith Master left him for dead, but never expected his apprentice to survive. Danat, of course, would go on to outlive the Brotherhood of Darkness once it was destroyed by Darth Bane on Ruusan. Learning of the Sith's destruction, he would travel around the galaxy collecting both powerful artifacts and several apprentices until he eventually came to rest on the world of Mustafar. Volta Danat and his followers would actually make their home in an abandoned temple of the ancient Jedi, and would form the Black Guard there. He would then establish himself as their first leader, which came with the title of the Kursk. The Black Guard believed this increased one's power and knowledge in the Force, and that one must understand the philosophies and abilities of other Force traditions from around the galaxy, not just the Sith or the Jedi. Therefore, the Black Guard had many members of their order scattered around the stars, though their headquarters always remained on Mustafar. The group also apparently believed that there was no light or dark side of the Force, and that the light or the dark would dwell within the user. Despite this philosophy though, it was reported that more often than not, the Black Guard studied the dark side, and had their ranks filled with dark Jedi. Not to mention, they had a brutal approach to initiation and to combat, considering their order was begat from former Sith Lords. Along with this, they made a practice of crafting Sith holocrons, and were actually shockingly good at it. The planet came back to prominence in 300 BBY. This is when the Techno Union laid claim to the world, which allowed them to collect the rare ores from its surface without needing to spend a ton of money on deep ore mines. The Techno Union had signed a treaty with the native Mustafarians, offering advanced tech. This would allow their civilizations to better survive and grow once more, in exchange for free reign to mine Mustafar's resources. And for some time, Birkin's Flow was the richest source of natural minerals in the entire galaxy. But the world would soon become of great interest to the Sith again, now in the Rule of Two era, and this was largely due to the world's location. It was the perfect hiding place for those who did not want to be discovered. The planet had become heavily industrialized, and by 54 ABY, one of the stations had been bought by Darth Plagueis under Higo Damask. Plagueis had turned the station into an accounting facility for Damask Holdings. Palpatine himself grew to actually like this facility a great deal, and he would use it to house an infant Maul. He raised Maul in the facility, having him seen by nanny droids until he could walk on his own. At such time, Sidious then began his Sith assassin training. In Legends, due to having grown up on Mustafar, Maul considered the lava planet to actually be his homeworld. It only came to the notice of the Jedi during the Clone Wars, when Sidious had tasked Cad Bane with abducting Force-sensitive children and then taking them to the secret facility there. Sidious glorified in the idea of raising his infants to be a private army of dark side spies, and would organize them to be experimented on in the facility in order to enhance their abilities artificially. Anakin and Ahsoka actually managed to deduce the location of Mustafar. They did so after they inspected Cad Bane's ship, and they soon arrived on the world to rescue the children. As the Jedi arrived at the facility, Sidious ordered the nanny droids to destroy the installation, as to ensure the loss of any evidence of his plot, even if this meant killing the children. Even though the nanny droids attacked the Jedi while using the babies as shields, Anakin and Ahsoka managed to eradicate the threat, rescuing all of the children before the facility sank beneath the lava. It was also here, during the Clone Wars, that the Cabal, which led the Black Sun Syndicate, were all murdered by Maul and Savage, while they were of course working with Death Watch. At the conclusion of the Clone Wars, the Separatists were losing the war badly, and Sidious was just ready to wrap things up in this phase of his plan. With Dooku now dead, the Separatist Council was terrified of what would become of them. Sidious instructed Grievous to relocate the Council to Mustafar for safekeeping. This was actually a very clever plan to keep all of the members of the Confederate leadership in one place, so that killing them off would be quick and easy. Sidious's plan would be fulfilled by a newly christened Lord Vader, when Palpatine promised to take care of the Separatists. Not a single organic or droid being survived when Vader had the sweep of the facility. After this, he would stare into the ashen clouds, contemplate the things that he had done for the sake of his wife, which brought a tear to his eye. But of course, we know how this story ends. Padme arrives on Mustafar to confront Anakin of his actions, and when Vader was ultimately defeated and burned on Mustafar, it took almost every trick that Palpatine knew in all of his Sith knowledge, a kit full of potions just to keep the Dark Lord alive, just to keep Vader alive. But his body wasn't the only thing that was irreparably destroyed during that battle, and what he left behind on Mustafar. The Kleger Core mining facility was also severely damaged during their confrontation, and part of its structure collapsed into the surrounding lava. Following the formation of the Empire, the HoloNet News reported that an industrial accident on Mustafar had caused the price of precious ores to now skyrocket. Nevertheless, Kleger Core never recovered from the damage of its main facility, leaving the most important company on Mustafar completely bankrupt. After the destruction of the Separatist Council, the Techno Union was imperialized, and Mustafar was largely now forgotten. The Mustafarians themselves quickly took over the mining operations of the Techno Union, and continued to harvest their own world for resources in order to sell and make a living. Milo Mensix, a local corporation executive, salvaged the assets and the staff of the Kleger Core, preventing the mining business from completely collapsing. His own company, Mensix Corporation, would eventually become the largest mining operation in the entire planet. And while the galaxy largely forgot about the volcanic world, a select few individuals would not. Two people in particular would take great interest in the planet after uncovering the identity of Lord Vader. The first was Grand Moff Tarkin, who satisfied a hunch of curiosity by looking into the Mustafarian records to see that Anakin Skywalker had allegedly died there according to some records. Due to privileged information, Tarkin deduced that it was possible that Anakin Skywalker had indeed become the Emperor's armored executioner. But Tarkin wisely kept these findings to himself. If only the next man had been so smart though. Following the funeral of Padme Amidala, her head of security, Captain Typho, was determined to find out the truth about her death. Over the next year, Typho searched for records regarding the events of Mustafar, and eventually obtained the official records detailing Anakin Skywalker's supposed death. However, he noticed that the record did not list the cause of death, which led him to conclude that it was abnormal. This led him to speculate that Vader had been responsible for Anakin's murder, and Typho later paid off an informant one who obtained travel records indicating that Palpatine had gone to Mustafar. This served to reinforce Typho's belief that Vader had traveled to the world and had killed both Padme and Anakin. In righteous indignation, Captain Typho eventually confronted Vader, but Vader would reveal to him what really happened before he murdered him. During the rise of the Empire, a Geonosian fugitive by the name of Gizor Delso decided to rebel against the New Order, reactivating a droid factory on Mustafar. Here he spent several years building up his own personal droid army and even a small fleet of ships. It was his plan to return to the galaxy as a powerful warlord and get revenge on his people. However, the Empire caught wind of this and dispatched the 501st Legion, Vader's Fist. And worse, Vader would be there as well. After breaking down Gizor's blockade, the clones stormed the facility and put an end to his small insurrection. This was one of the final missions of the old clone troopers in the 501st, before they were eventually replaced by normal human recruits, and the clones were phased out. The next time Mustafar was seen in prominence was during the Galactic Civil War, with the purge of the Black Guard. The order, which had began from Volta Denat, would live until the year 1 ABY. During this time, they frequently had run-in and conflict with a criminal organization, a group calling themselves the Phantom Bandits. The group then hired mercenaries to take out the Black Guard and their hold on Mustafar. Miraculously, the Black Guard were actually extremely weak, their views diluted through Jedi and Sith doctrine, and the group managed to kill all of the members in the Enclave, which allowed the archaeologists to access whatever that they had desired. However, it is almost certain that the Black Guard order did survive due to the spread out nature of their members. It is thought that they eventually would take back their home on Mustafar, and that they even may have killed the archaeologist. Shortly after the end of the Galactic Civil War, a former clone trooper turned Sith Lord was using one of the mining facilities on Mustafar, attempting to create his own cloning base. His name was X1, and along with his brother X2, they had been clones of Jedi. One of the only times in the lore, legends included, that cloning a Force sensitive was successful. X1 had become a Sith, while X2 had become a Jedi. Luke Skywalker had been the one to first travel to Mustafar to put an end to X1's scheming, but he would find himself captured by the Sith clone. X1 planned to use Luke Skywalker's DNA as the template for his own Dark Jedi army. However, he was stopped by X2, who not only rescued Luke, but defeated his brother in single combat. Despite X2's best efforts at turning his brother back to the light though, X1 was too far gone into the darkness, and he would meet his end on the Volcanic world. This was really the last time that we see Mustafar in Legends, though there are records of Darth Krayt having possessed this world as a part of his Sith Empire, so that's pretty cool. Interestingly, unlike canon, Vader didn't really have a lot to do with Mustafar after burning on it in Legends. Vader in Legends chose to build his castle elsewhere, and largely avoided places that associated with Anakin's past, such as Tatooine, Naboo, and obviously Mustafar. But although it was Anakin's gravesite, it was Darth Vader's true birthplace. That had been where he had truly given himself over to the dark side and released all of his Jedi inhibitions. But anyway, my friends, this was a Legends accounting of all of Mustafar's history. If you would like to see us explore the entire canon timeline at some point, please be sure to let us know. There is obviously a lot more Vader lore in canon than there is compared to Legends continuity, which is intriguing. I only wish that we got to know more about the ancient history of the world when it was in possession of the Old Republic Jedi. It seemed at that time that it was full of life, of course before it was ruined and turned into a hellscape by their own mistakes. It's almost allegorical for something else. But as always, my friends, thank you so much for watching the archives today, and as always, may the Force be with you.